Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? Hi, I'm Nathan Mercero, CEO of Planning Alternatives. We're a disruptive brand in the financial planning space with a point of view that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Growing up in a small town in Canada, I experienced examples of families with money and without. It started me on this journey of understanding wealth and the idea that spending a day in a canoe with someone could be one of the best investments you could make. Join me as I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, rule breakers, and friends to discover their perspective of true wealth. And maybe you'll start to shift yours. I'm excited today to be joined by Janet T. Planet, who is a sought-after innovator and experienced design worker, the founder of Interplanetary, a next-generation innovation consultancy. Janet's background has covered creating really iconic experiences in entertainment, consumer goods, hospitality. Janet, I want to welcome you to Day in a Canoe, and we're celebrating our Canadian root system, I think. I understand you're the motherland of Canada.
I am Canadian. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. You left from California today.
Well, I tell people that, I was born in Schitt's Creek, or a version of Schitt's Creek, and I think that shape captured a lot of Canadian lifestyle in small towns. But you've had an incredible journey from your beginnings in Canada. Maybe you could tell listeners about some of the highlights of how you starting at Queen's, I believe, and then evolving through your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started off life as an opera singer when I was young, and almost went to school at U of T Opera School. But then I had a director say to me, "You're 6 feet tall. Nobody needs a 6 foot tall soprano as a leading lady." So I quickly pivoted and joined the rest of my family who are engineers, and went to study mechanical at Queen's, which was fantastic. But while I was there, I kind of developed a taste for design and fashion. So right as soon as I finished at Queen's, I actually moved to London, England, and studied fashion design. And came back to Toronto and ran my own fashion label and showed at Canadian Fashion Week 5 times. And but the more time went on, the more I realized I had a real taste for innovation. I was actually living a dual life as a fashion designer by day or an engineer by day and fashion designer by night. And had an experience at our factory where our marketing teams would come and ask us if we could make things, and inevitably we couldn't make exactly what they wanted, but I was like, but we can do so much here and we've got all this capacity. What else would meet the needs of your customers and your consumers? And they just wouldn't have that conversation. So then I decided it was time to jump ship and join the marketing people and reconsider how the company did innovation work from there. So I think that ethos has kind of always been with me. How can you make the most of every asset in your midst, and really kind of get the most value out of what you've already invested in. From there, I ended up moving to California and later to Nestle's headquarters in Switzerland, and was part of an innovation acceleration team for them. And then later came back and ran the Wonka brand, which was amazing. And then I basically had the best job in all of Nestle, so it was time to go. And then have been working in consulting for the last, 15 years now, doing innovation consulting all over the world across all different industries. Yeah.
And I know one of the highlights was helping Richard Branson and the Virgin Voyages design a client experience.
Yeah.
And I find that when you think about creativity, there's often a lot of tension that is around the birthing center for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
What's your point of view on the creative process, the things to wrestle with, how to come up with best ideas, how to kind of kill the bad ones, but maybe save them for a rainy day too. I mean, what's been your process?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think there's this cliche of when people are coming up with ideas that you have a brainstorm and somebody's facilitating with colorful post-it notes saying, no idea is a bad idea." And I would venture to say there are so many bad ideas, and there are lots of ways to basically um, make the process more fruitful and more efficient. And so I'm a huge proponent of figuring out what those constraints are early on, and really getting to a great strategy that makes a really clear sandbox of where to mine for great ideas. And then it's a little bit like putting a nozzle on a garden hose, where you just if you have a garden hose with no nozzle on it, and you switch it on, it kind of just goes "meow" and doesn't go anywhere. And whereas if you put the constraints on it and dial it in to exactly what you want to get, you can get to much further and faster, the right kinds of direction. So I'm all about kind of determining what those constraints are as early in the process as possible. I always call it blue sky on an airplane. You've got a destination and a means of getting there.
That's important. So, what might a retrospective case study be of either a project you worked on, a situation where you faced constraints, had to navigate through them, had to get your garden hose
Mhm.
nozzle on the right way?
Absolutely. Well, the case that you mentioned was one of my favorites of all time. Was working with Richard Branson and the founding team of Virgin Voyages to basically create a cruise line from a blank sheet of paper, but done the Virgin way. And part of the brief was we want to create a cruise line for people who wouldn't set foot on a cruise ship. Which means kind of undoing all the things that are kind of bogged with, um, kind of bad press and just kind of the cliches of kind of like who's on board and what you do and how it rolls. Um, but ultimately, there were a lot of fascinating, things to uncover in kind of understanding what was broken about the cruise industry, and that's very much the Virgin way, is find out what's broken, and then flip all those broken things on their head and don't just take them to 0, but actually make them moments of delight. So that's kind of the foundation. And then from there, it was really understanding, what makes vacations memorable for people. And and really sort of saying, how do we catalyze those moments for people, whether it's meeting people who feel like they're part of they're cut from the same cloth and kind of creating shared memories with new people that are the right people, and and just kind of looking for mm, things that activate people into being the best version of themselves as well. Because I think we'd all like to think we show up as our best selves on vacation.
I can attest to a few. My family can attest to a few stressful moments on vacation. So, but when airplane deadlines to meet or logistics that come into play. You mentioned moments of delight as a phrase, and I find that fascinating. What do you mean by that, and how do people discover those in a way that's meaningful to their personal life and also their business life?
Um, so moments of delight. So one of my it's funny as an innovator, you kind of become the problem solver of your friend group and your colleagues, and using these kinds of processes to um, figure out kind of really what makes you tick can actually be really profound. I'm a huge fan of journaling, but again, with constraints. I think a lot of people look for answers just by getting up at dawn and with their morning coffee, just doing stream of consciousness. But there's a lot of power in directed journaling. And so, when I,
What's directed journaling mean?
so as an example, when I have a friend who's at a crossroads of kind of like what to do next, I will say to them, okay, each morning, take 10 minutes per question and answer each of these 3 questions for 7 days in a row. So the first question is, what do you love doing? The second question is, what gives me energy? And then the third question is around your superpowers. What unique skills, experiences, ways of seeing the world. What do I have, at least in the combination that's unique to me? What do I have that nobody else has? Like, what are my true superpowers? And then basically it's about kind of getting creative at the nexus point of the Venn diagram of those three questions to really make sure that you're doing things you love doing. You're doing things that energize you. And people are like, aren't those the same thing? And they're not actually. Once you start journaling on those two different prompts, you'll discover that those are quite different things. And linking those up with your superpowers enables you to find those places where you can contribute in a place of total flow with all the support and energizing fuel that you need, and really doing things that you uniquely can bring to the world. And for me, that's the recipe for joy.
Love it. What gets in the way of people doing that? It sounds like such a wonderful experience. Why wouldn't all of the world do that and row their canoe in the same direction?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of shoulds, you know. Um, we grow up with certain either parental figures or other forces in culture and nature sort of saying you need to be X, Y, and Z to be happy. Um, and there, even when people actually do engage in this exercise, the reason why I have them do it 7 days in a row, the same three questions over and over again, is because it's a little bit like peeling back the onion, where the outer layers are still kind of riddled with the shoulds. And the deeper you go and the more you kind of demand of your subconscious and your spirit to like really answer these questions the way they actually feel, the more you get closer to truth.
Hmm. You're living a life, and you are setting an example of someone who does that. And I think that's really extraordinary in our culture where, um, I guess, fitting into the norm or going with the flow or meeting all these should expectations is rewarded, and we're reinforced through social media about what we should be or who we should be, and it's all a manufactured process. Our mutual friend Amanda Kasgar shared with me that you changed your name when you're 21.
I did. It feels like a lifetime ago now. Yeah.
So what's that story about, and how, like, was that part of your clarity of alignment for who you are?
Yeah. So it was right after I'd finished my engineering degree at Queen's, and I was off to England to study design. And I think while I was at Queen's, I kind of started taking myself a little bit too seriously, more than I wanted to. And I had already kind of had that Janet the Planet as a nickname. And it came to me that that's who I wanted to be. Like, that's the energy I wanted to bring to the world. And it's funny, in Canada, back then, you would go with $183 to the birth certificate office and say, I want to change my name and fill out a form, and off you go. But in England, I'm actually a dual citizen. I have a British passport. And in England, you have to go in front of a judge and hire a lawyer and say why you want to change your name. And I said to remind myself to not take myself too seriously. And they're like, "Yep, that's a great idea."
You and you were like Janet the Planet at
Yeah.
that moment.
But it's funny because I didn't realize at the time that it would kinda have this knock-on effect to people around me, especially in a business context. I at this very Nestle headquarters, global, and, this is a place where people wear suit jackets to work and put them on to go down to the cafeteria for lunch and things. But I showed up as Janet the Planet, and the Swiss just didn't know what to make of me. And, but it just, again, it reminds other people to not take themselves too seriously. I mean, how serious can you be if you're actually in a meeting with Janet the Planet? So, but the simple things in life, like, clearing customs and going to the post office, are also really joyful.
It's a statement as well as an identifier. So
Yeah.
cool name.
30 years ago, though, I don't think my younger self really knew what they were up to, but I'm really grateful.
That's great. Now, I've heard about your innovative day called Spy Day. How did
Yes.
that come about, and what is it about?
It was actually birthed, gosh, back in 1998. I was living in London, and I'm a naturally curious person. I think that's basically the fuel for all of my innovation work. I love that every day of my life is different from the previous one. Um, I when I was living in London, I took to walking everywhere, and I got really entrenched in the history of London, and just started getting to know all these strange little corners of the city. And I wanted to create an experience for my friends at the time to really take them around to some of these corners, but with a bit of a different purpose. So I created my very first spy mission. It was an all-day affair. I created spy profiles for every participant. I got them in the mail in advance in these fancy, elaborate packages. And then everybody had their spy characters they had to come and be all day, and then it all kind of ended up in a big finale in the British Museum, and then everybody got shunted off to a restaurant to have a bit of a party. But it's over the years, it's expanded and become a real whole weekend-long ordeal, and I've had them in Switzerland and in London and a couple times here in LA, and then the most recent one was in Long Beach, and that was 258 people flew in from 15 countries, I think it was, to come and be spies for the weekend. I love being able to kind of paint a story onto the canvas of a city and have people explore the history and then marry it with a bit of fantasy and storytelling as well.
It's a cool adventure. What advice would you give to people who are looking for breakthrough in design or innovation that are stuck? So oftentimes there's that, spinning wheel of death image on our PCs that kind of remind us that we can be stuck. How do you get through that?
Yeah. Um, I like to kind of break it back to kind of taking inventory of everybody's needs. And kind of looking at the whole ecosystem of everybody that's touched by that problem. And individually putting yourself, using big empathy and putting yourself in the seat of each of the players within that scenario, whether it's a business challenge or a personal challenge, and really looking at all the players in the ecosystem and understanding their needs and kind of looking for the Venn diagram of understanding where there's overlap and where there's current that could really create a win-win-win-win-win solution for people. I find that kind of retreating back to seeds of empathy as opposed to what's the answer can really just change our thinking and again get us away from that fixed thinking back into the what's possible.
Mm. I love the idea of possibility. There's so many available opportunities to explore. Janet, you have embraced creativity and possibility and are sailing through it at a interplanetary level that is admiring. So really appreciate your input today, and thank you for sharing perspective, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It was a total pleasure. All the best.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. To discover what wealth means to you, please take our assessment at planningalt.com.